us appreciate the impact that a DFI can make. And when I think about the impact, very often I think of the power of DFIs to co-invest with other investors. But beyond that, your thoughts about the efficiency that we can really bring out of development finance?
Historically, the role of the DFI, whether that's a financial institution that is representative of a single government or multilateral with several governments, is really to act as, I guess, as an anchor investor, as a catalyst to enable private sector investment to come into projects. And I see that in a couple of ways. One is there are certain sectors in infrastructure which are underrepresented or underserved. And those are sectors where perhaps traditionally the internal rates of returns have been low and have not been as attractive for commercial or private sector institutions to invest in. And those are yet very critical when it comes to the impact in terms of economic growth. Those sectors, for instance, would include the likes of health, education, water, sanitation. Those are, we obviously have a lot of emphasis on power, which is absolutely correct. And even when we talk about power, it's appropriate to categorize that between generation, transmission, and distribution. So there are certain sectors which perhaps are less attractive from a private sector's perspective, but actually, or at the outset, are deemed to be more risky. And that's where the role of a DFI quite often comes in to act as a catalyst, to perhaps de-risk some of those segments, or to provide early stage funding, or to just really provide a greater diversity of sources of financing.
I think the point here is that we must understand that money is fungible, right? Capital is fungible. Capital will always find returns where it can get it, right? Capital does not come with a responsibility per se, right?
Yeah.
Now, as a DFI, of course, when we go and raise capital, be it from the governments or be it from other DFIs or be it from the capital markets, which is where most of our funding comes from, we have an obligation to be able to provide decent returns, right? So I don't think the debate should be around whether we should be providing subsidized funding, but I do accept Solomon's point that we should be able to, as DFI, do 3 or 4 things well. One is pricing. We should be, because typically we have better credit ratings, we have access to better financing, and therefore we should be able to bring down the pricing on projects. Second is tenor, that clearly commercial banks cannot do the sort of tenors that infrastructure projects need or require, and DFIs can and should play a role. Another aspect which I'm happy to elaborate later is, as AFC we are doing, nothing unique about it, every other DFI has probably done it in the past, is around credit enhancements, providing guarantees, providing enhancements at the project level, which allows private sector capital to come in. So I think from a pure financial modeling point of view, the support DFIs can give is perhaps in those areas with an added dimension, and the added dimension is that we are, because we are built in a certain way with a certain constitution backing us, we should be able to take much more of the early stage risk, the early stage greenfield construction stroke development risk. And if we can do those 3, 4 things together, I think the development aspect of our development financing will probably have a real sort of substance to it.
We came on board with one principle that we need to take off in terms of the development in the sector by doing the right things. I think the leadership of organizations, companies in the African setting really need to redefine themselves. For you to
Are you speaking about political leadership now?
No. I'm talking of in industries.
Right.
Need to redefine themselves. We started with the principle of making sure that our books are open, we have quality management, good due process in most things, and making sure that, proper corporate governance, making sure that when we go out there for finance, we are going to get a good support. That is important for companies and, who wants to who want their projects to be funded. So we need to define Africa We don't need to go by the rules of what is done outside Africa. We can develop our new, system within Africa and make sure that we do the right things at the right time. It will go a long way to making the DFIs, feel more comfortable. And the second thing you need to do within the African setting is to start looking inwards. We have all along look outside of the shores of Africa to find funds. And you could see what was said by the additional.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
The president of the AFDB.
They're willing to do so much, but how do they do it if we're not set to receive it? So I think we need to redefine a lot of organizations in Africa, and I think we need to start doing it right and reduce the appetite for other things that are not going to encourage DFIs to invest.
Right.
And I'd like to flip the coin a little bit and say, indeed, we do need the traditional DFIs, we do need the partial guarantees, we do need all the traditional ways of de-risking projects. But a lot of perception, negative perception about projects on the continent, I wouldn't say necessarily unfair in a lot of ways, but I think there's a perception problem that needs to be addressed, and no better place than starting with governments. So making sure that your regulations, your regulatory framework, your legislations, making sure that the projects, the contractual nature of the project is properly handled. These are some of the things that on this side, administrations can do, and I speak for the Nigerian government, can do to make sure that our projects are properly structured. We're working on soft infrastructure. Of course, we have a priority for hard infrastructure, for power, for rail, for roads, all the things that we need to diversify our economy and make sure that we can export as much as we need to and develop a very robust economy. But we have not neglected the soft issues. So I coordinate the Enabling Business Environment intervention to make sure that we touch on all the regulatory bottlenecks, including transparency, including battling corruption, including battling all those perceptions that sort of linger around the continent. And it creates an opaqueness that makes some investors hesitate. So we can't just put it all on DFIs. We have to definitely play a very strong role as an administration and as governments on the continent to make sure that we're investment ready and that we help to fix our own pricing of our projects by doing the right things.